Hello. How y'all doing? So this video is just gonna be about whose report are you going to believe? And I just wanted to talk about, and this is more so addressing the church. I wanted to talk about, be careful what you choose to believe about others when they choose to leave a church or whatever. And I'll just use my life as an example. When I left my church back in 2016, I remember getting a particular person, and it was said about me that I would be a wanderer. And the connotation behind that word that was stated about me in my mind was negative. When I think about a wanderer, I think about someone that's just going about life, wandering on aimlessly with no direction, and it also to the church can be defined as someone who church hops. And a lot of people think that when someone church hops, that means that they have no sense. They have no sense of direction. They have no guidance. And so whose report are you going to believe is not just about people and what they choose to believe about others, but also whose report are you going to believe. This is also to yourself. Because people can put what they think you are and say certain things about you, and you have to believe what God says about you. And so when I got that word from somebody that was stated about me, I thought to myself, dang, I don't want to be a wanderer. I want to be in the will of God, and I want to do, what God wants me to do. And, I was afraid, and, all that good stuff. But see, there was something in me that I did not want to go back to my old church, and first and foremost, the main reason was I did not feel comfortable being there, and I did not feel safe. I felt like I was in prison there. I didn't feel free there, and so that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to go. But in my mind, I said, God, if that's what you want me to do, I'll go back. I'll go back. And so I stayed away, and I left. But then I did attempt to try to go back. And it's funny because, I spoke to my former pastor, and she told me at that particular time, that I tried to come back, she was like, no, declined to come back. And so right then and there, that was confirmation, or that was enough for me to keep moving forward. And so fast forward to later on in 2017, when I ended up becoming a part of a prayer team. And I remember, one of my leaders of the prayer team was like, basically God was like, she'll go wherever I tell her to go. And so when he said that to me, because in my prayer team we would help each other to become better prophets and exercise and better in our gifts and pray for the church. Okay, so yeah, we pray and exercise our gifts and help encourage one another. And one of these sessions that we were having where we were prophesying to each other, more so them, because I'm not really one of those people that just prophesy like that. But he told me that, you know, God said that she will go wherever I tell her to go, and that was about me. And it's funny because it's like, you got to be careful, you know, you got to be careful when it comes to who you listen to in church and what they say about people, because a lot of times in our own pride and our own human understanding, we will try to label somebody based upon how we think of them and not how God sees them. And that's a mistake. You can't do that. You know, this is why when you get into doing ministry, you have got to ask God, you know, let me have a heart for your people. You know, let me die to myself and let me see people how you see people. Because God can look at a murderer and call that murderer a prophet, and that's my servant. He could have just finished killing somebody, raping somebody, but God says, that's my servant. That's my he will be a prophet to the nations, blah blah blah. He you know, that's how God sees that person. And so you have to be careful not to label somebody based upon how you feel they are. And so, you know, where I came from, my old church, you know, they were very big on staying at the church that you were at, meaning once you find a church, you don't leave, you know. And later on, you know, God began to teach me that is a cult type of mentality. You know, that is a cult type of thinking. And it's not of his spirit, but that's of the enemy. And there are a lot of churches out here that are how do you call it? There are a lot of churches out here that I think they don't realize that they're operating in a cultish way. You know, and because it's a tradition, it's because it's something that's culturally accepted in that church environment, they think it's God, but it's not God, because nobody decided to challenge the tradition. You know what I'm saying? And so, because God was calling me to leave my church. God was calling me to leave my church. I was looked at as the bad person or whatever because I wanted to leave. And so people think that we don't really, how do I say this? A lot of us underestimate the sovereignty and the power of our God to be able to lead and guide his children. You know, if we look at the Bible, God says, I will shepherd the flock. So even though he may give his children to certain people to shepherd or to under shepherd, he's still the ultimate and chief shepherd, you know. And a lot of times people in churches, they forget that. Hey, you do answer to the chief shepherd. You know, there is someone above you that is still shepherding you and shepherding the people that God has given you as well. So you're not the ultimate authority. And a lot of times in churches, we allow human beings to be the ultimate authority and the ultimate say so, and that's just not of God. So you know, it's so important that we understand our word, and that's why we need to know our word. And so when I was told by my prayer leader that I will go wherever God tells me to go, it really felt good, because I was like, yes, that's all I want to do. You know, I may not always be accurate at that or always be perfect at that. But in my heart of hearts, I think, or even just in God's will, that's what I want to do, and I will do that because that's what he says over my life, you know. And so when you have, that's why it's so important to have people around you in your walk that have the heart of God and not the heart of the accuser or the heart of the enemy. Because the accuser and the enemy, he wants to control, you know, he wants to lord over you. But that's not the spirit of God. Now, there's only one Lord. You know what I'm saying? It's only one Lord who can effectively and properly lord over us, and that is Jesus Christ. You know, but even he's very humble and patient with us, with his sheep. And so it's very important to be around people who want to liberate you, who want to free you, and not want to control you. If you're in an environment where it's about control and it's about obey your leaders, and you don't have a mutual respect within the church as a whole, because as a leader, the greatest example was Jesus when he said, look, do as I do. Here you see me washing your feet. I'm greater than you, but I'm washing your feet. And as leaders, they should be available and willing to humble themselves even to their sheep that God has given them to shepherd over, you know. And so another thing too, it's so important to have your own relationship with God. And your relationship with God cannot be through another person. For so many years, my relationship with God was so contingent upon somebody else, because or dependent upon someone else teaching me about God. And there's nothing wrong with being dependent on somebody for a season to teach you, because everybody, you know, needs that guidance or could potentially need that guidance. And that's okay. But even still, the person who teaches you should be wise enough to want to liberate you. That's how Paul was. Paul was a great leader, and he said he empowered his people. He said, by now, you guys should be teachers. You guys should be teaching, you know, but instead you guys are still on milk, you know. So this is why, like I said, it's really important to have your own relationship with the Lord, because then he can tell you who you are. And you won't have to depend on other people to know who you are. Now, that's not to say that God doesn't use other people to tell you who you are. You know, he does. But God also can teach you by himself. There have been many things that God has taught me just in my own personal studies, in my own personal communion with him, that he's told me on his own, and I didn't have to go to a prophet or whatever, or a pastor to hear